Introduction. A gentle beginning to the history of tea. Tea is a quiet presence in human history. It has accompanied daily routines, patient conversations, solitary moments, and long periods of reflection. It has existed not as a spectacle, but as a steady companion. Across centuries and continents, tea has been prepared slowly, consumed calmly, and regarded with thoughtful attention. In this lecture, we will move carefully through the long history of tea, allowing each period to unfold without urgency. We will not hurry through dynasties, nor rush across oceans. Instead, we will proceed at a measured pace, observing how tea emerged, how it was understood, and how it gradually became woven into the fabric of everyday life. The history of tea is not a story of sudden change. It is a history shaped by repetition, habit, refinement, and patience. Leaves were gathered, dried, infused, and consumed in much the same way, again and again, over long spans of time. Through these repeated actions, tea acquired meaning, structure, and cultural weight. As we begin, it is useful to remember that tea was not always a beverage. It was once a leaf among many leaves, growing quietly on evergreen shrubs, unnoticed except by those who lived close to the land. Its transformation into a global drink was gradual, unforced, and largely unintentional. This lecture will follow that gradual transformation. We will examine the earliest encounters between humans and tea plants. We will observe how tea entered medicine, ritual, philosophy, trade, and daily life. At every stage, we will pause long enough to understand the conditions that allowed tea to endure. There is no need to anticipate what comes next. Each chapter will stand calmly on its own, complete and unhurried. The purpose is not to arrive, but to remain, moment by moment, within the gentle continuity of tea's long past. Chapter 1. The tea plant and its natural origins. Long before tea became a drink, it existed simply as a plant. The tea plant, known scientifically as Camellia sinensis, grew quietly in regions of warm rainfall, misty hillsides, and well-drained soil. It belonged to a family of evergreen shrubs, characterized by dark leaves and small, pale blossoms. In its natural state, the tea plant was unremarkable. It did not dominate the landscape. It did not demand attention. It grew slowly, steadily, responding to climate, elevation, and season with patient consistency. The regions where wild tea plants first appeared were marked by dense forests and layered ecosystems. These environments supported gradual observation rather than sudden discovery. Early human communities encountered tea plants not through deliberate cultivation, but through familiarity with their surroundings. At first, tea leaves were not brewed. They were chewed, boiled, or mixed with other plants. Their effects were mild but noticeable, producing alertness without agitation. This subtle influence aligned well with the rhythms of daily labor and long periods of focus. The tea plant responded well to pruning and harvesting. When leaves were removed carefully, the plant produced new growth, allowing repeated collection without destruction. This quality made tea suitable for long-term use, even before formal agriculture developed. Over time, communities learned which leaves were most desirable. Young leaves were softer. Older leaves were more bitter. Seasonal variations influenced flavor and strength, encouraging careful attention to timing. The plant itself taught patience. It required time to grow. It rewarded restraint rather than excess. These qualities would later become central to the cultural values surrounding tea. Before tea was named, before it was traded, and before it was recorded in writing, it was already shaping habits of observation and restraint. Its history began not in ceremony, but in quiet familiarity with the land. Chapter 2. Early use of tea in ancient China. The earliest documented uses of tea emerged in ancient China, where written records preserved observations made over many generations. In these early periods, tea was valued primarily for its medicinal qualities rather than its flavor. Physicians and herbalists classified tea as a warming plant, capable of aiding digestion, clearing the mind, and supporting balance within the body. It was often combined with other herbs, roots, and minerals, prepared as a decoction rather than an infusion. Tea was not consumed casually. It was taken deliberately, often in response to specific physical conditions. Its bitterness was accepted as part of its effectiveness, and sweetness was neither expected nor desired. Over time, tea began to move beyond medicine. Monastic communities found tea particularly useful during long hours of meditation. Its gentle stimulation supported wakefulness without disrupting calm concentration. This association with mindfulness and discipline contributed to tea's gradual elevation in cultural status. It became linked with clarity, moderation, and thoughtful living. Preparation methods slowly evolved. Leaves were steamed, pressed into cakes, and ground into powder. Each step required attention, reinforcing the slow and deliberate nature of tea consumption. Written texts from this period describe tea with careful neutrality. There is little enthusiasm, little exaggeration. Tea is presented as reliable, consistent, and useful. As tea entered daily life, it remained understated. It was present in households, monasteries, and administrative centers without becoming a luxury. Its value lay in its dependability rather than its novelty. By the end of this early period, tea had established itself as a substance worthy of regular use and quiet respect. It was no longer merely a plant, but it had not yet become a symbol. That transformation would come later. Chapter 3: Tea, Philosophy, and the Art of Preparation. As Chinese society developed, tea gradually intersected with philosophical thought. Confucianism, Taoism, and later Buddhism each found elements of their values reflected in the preparation and consumption of tea. Tea preparation required balance. Water temperature, leaf quantity, and timing all mattered. Too much heat damaged the leaves. Too little failed to release their character. This sensitivity encouraged attentiveness without urgency. The preparer observed rather than controlled. The process rewarded calm repetition. Philosophers wrote of tea as an aid to moral clarity. It sharpened the mind without disturbing emotional equilibrium. It supported conversation without dominating it. During this period, tea gatherings became more refined. Utensils were selected for simplicity. Spaces were arranged to minimize distraction. The goal was not display, but harmony. Written manuals appeared, describing tea preparation in careful detail. These texts did not promise pleasure or excitement. They emphasized consistency, cleanliness, and respect for materials. Tea became a medium through which philosophical ideas could be practiced rather than discussed. One did not argue about moderation while preparing tea. One enacted moderation through careful measurement and timing. This approach allowed tea to function as a daily exercise in restraint. Its influence was subtle, accumulating over time through repeated action. By the end of this chapter in tea's history, tea had become more than a beverage. It had become a quiet discipline, integrated into thought, behavior, and daily routine. Chapter 4: Tea, during the Tang Dynasty and the rise of cultural refinement. During the Tang Dynasty, tea entered a period of quiet refinement. This era, marked by relative stability and cultural confidence, allowed everyday practices to become more deliberate and reflective. Tea benefited from this atmosphere of careful attention. Consumption of tea expanded beyond medicine and monastic life into broader society. Officials, scholars, and travelers encountered tea regularly. often during moments of rest rather than necessity. As a result, tea began to acquire associations with leisure, contemplation, and cultivated living. Preparation methods continued to evolve. Tea leaves were steamed, compressed into cakes, and later ground before use. The process was slow, requiring multiple steps, each demanding patience and familiarity. This complexity did not discourage participation. Instead, it encouraged learning through repetition. Tea preparation became a skill acquired gradually, rather than a technique mastered quickly. One of the most influential developments of this period was the appearance of written works dedicated entirely to tea. These texts did not seek to persuade or impress. They described tea calmly, focusing on origin, water quality, utensils, and method. Such writings treated tea as worthy of scholarly attention without elevating it to extravagance. The tone remained measured, emphasizing harmony between human action and natural material. Tea houses began to appear along travel routes and in urban centers. They were modest spaces, designed for rest rather than spectacle. Conversation was subdued, and the presence of tea encouraged calm interaction. Importantly, tea during the Tang period remained inclusive. While refinement increased, tea did not become inaccessible. Its growing popularity reinforced its role as a shared cultural practice. By the end of the Tang dynasty, tea had settled into Chinese life as both an ordinary habit and a refined activity. It existed comfortably between simplicity and sophistication, without urgency or excess. Chapter 5. Song Dynasty. Innovations and the aesthetic of tea. The Song dynasty brought further quiet transformation to tea culture. During this period, attention shifted towards subtle distinctions, visual harmony, and aesthetic restraint. Tea preparation changed in form. Powdered tea became common, whisked with hot water to produce a light foam. This method emphasized texture and appearance as much as taste. The act of preparation slowed further. Whisking required steady movement and focus. The surface of the tea was observed closely, not judged, but noticed. Utensils became simpler in shape, yet more refined in proportion. Bowls were chosen to highlight contrast between tea and vessel. Muted colors and soft glazes were preferred over ornamentation. These choices reflected broader artistic values of the Song period. Attention was given to balance, understatement, and the quiet presence of objects. Tea naturally aligned with these principles. Tea gatherings during this time were calm and orderly. They followed predictable sequences, reducing uncertainty and distraction. Participants understood their roles without instruction. Poetry and painting of the era frequently included tea, not as a focal point, but as part of a larger scene. Tea appeared alongside rocks, bamboo, water, and empty space. It belonged naturally within contemplative settings. This integration reinforced tea's association with reflection rather than stimulation. It was not consumed to provoke thought, but to support its steady flow. The Song dynasty's contribution to tea culture lay not in invention, but in refinement. Practices already in place were adjusted gently, without disruption. By the end of this period, tea had become closely linked with aesthetic judgment and disciplined attention, remaining calm, predictable, and quietly enduring. Chapter 6. The spread of tea beyond China. As tea culture matured within China, it gradually extended beyond its place of origin. This expansion was not sudden. It followed established routes of trade, travel, and cultural exchange. Tea moved first into neighboring regions where climate and custom allowed gradual adaptation. In each location, tea was received cautiously, evaluated through existing traditions rather than adopted immediately. Travelers carried tea as provisions. Monks shared tea with other monastic communities. Merchants introduced tea alongside silk, ceramics, and texts. The leaf itself changed little. What changed was interpretation. Each culture encountered tea with its own expectations and rhythms. In some regions, tea retained medicinal associations. In others, it became a symbol of hospitality. Preparation methods varied, but the central qualities of calm and repetition remained. Importantly, tea did not demand transformation. It adapted quietly to local customs, allowing itself to be integrated rather than imposed. This adaptability contributed to its longevity. Tea did not replace existing practices. It complemented them. Records from this period describe tea without exaggeration. It is noted as useful, agreeable, and steady. Rarely is it described as extraordinary. As tea moved farther from its origins, it retained the discipline developed over centuries. Its preparation remained slow, its effects remained subtle. By the end of this chapter in tea's history, tea had begun its long journey toward global presence, still defined by patience, restraint, and quiet consistency. Chapter 7: Tea in Japan and the Development of Ritual Practice. When tea reached Japan, it arrived quietly, carried by monks who had traveled to China for study and reflection. These individuals encountered tea not as a novelty, but as a familiar companion during long periods of discipline and learning. In Japan, tea was first valued for its ability to support sustained attention. Monastic communities incorporated tea into daily routines, preparing and consuming it with deliberate care. The act of drinking tea became closely associated with meditation and structured calm. Over time, preparation methods were simplified and standardized. Powdered tea, whisked into a smooth liquid, became common. This approach emphasized consistency and precision without haste. The physical setting in which tea was consumed also gained importance. Spaces were arranged to minimize distraction. Movement was restrained, and gestures were repeated in the same order, again and again. These repeated actions gradually formed what became known as the tea ceremony. The ceremony was not designed to impress. It was designed to stabilize attention and encourage quiet presence. Objects used in tea preparation were selected for modesty. Irregular shapes, muted tones, and signs of age were accepted and valued. These qualities reflected an appreciation for impermanence and restraint. Language surrounding tea remained measured. Descriptions focused on process rather than outcome. There was little emphasis on taste and none on excitement. Through this ritualization, tea in Japan became a disciplined practice rather than a casual beverage. Yet its purpose remained unchanged. It supported calm continuity rather than stimulation. By the time tea rituals were fully established, tea had become deeply embedded in Japanese cultural life, maintaining the same quiet steadiness that characterized its earlier history. Chapter 8: Tea and the Philosophy of Simplicity. As tea traditions matured, they became closely aligned with philosophical ideas centered on simplicity and acceptance. Tea did not demand elaborate explanation. Its meaning emerged through repeated experience rather than abstract thought. In many traditions, tea came to represent balance. It required attention but not strain. It invited reflection but not withdrawal. Preparation involved minimal ingredients and limited tools. This reduction encouraged focus on the essential aspects of the process. Nothing was added without purpose. Imperfections were not corrected. Uneven bowls, visible repairs, and natural textures were accepted as part of the experience. This acceptance reinforced an understanding of time and change. The act of preparing tea became a quiet acknowledgement of transience. Water cooled, leaves softened, steam rose and disappeared. Philosophical writings from this period often used tea as a reference point for disciplined living, not as metaphor, but as example. One did not discuss simplicity while drinking tea. One practiced it. This approach allowed tea to remain grounded. It did not become symbolic beyond its function. Its significance was practical and embodied. As tea culture emphasized simplicity, it resisted excess. Displays of wealth or technical mastery were discouraged. The goal was consistency rather than innovation. Through this alignment with philosophy, tea maintained its calming influence across generations. It remained unchanged in purpose, even as societies evolved around it. Chapter 9. Early encounters between tea and the wider world. As trade routes expanded, tea began to encounter cultures far removed from its origins. These early encounters were cautious and gradual. Merchants transported tea alongside spices, textiles, and ceramics. Its value was recognized slowly, often compared to other unfamiliar goods. At first, tea was treated as a curiosity rather than a staple. Preparation methods varied widely. Some boiled tea with herbs or salt. Others attempted to recreate unfamiliar techniques using available tools. Despite these variations, tea's fundamental qualities persisted. Its effects were mild. Its preparation required patience. Written accounts from travelers described tea in reserved terms. It was noted for its bitterness, its warming quality, and its ability to sustain attention. There was little enthusiasm, but steady interest. Tea entered households gradually. It did not replace existing beverages. It was added cautiously, often reserved for specific occasions. This slow adoption allowed tea to be understood on its own terms. It was neither rejected nor exaggerated. It was observed. Over time, familiarity increased. Repeated preparation reduced uncertainty. Tea became predictable and therefore acceptable. By the end of these early encounters, tea had established a foothold beyond Asia. It remained unchanged in nature, even as its context expanded. This chapter marks the point at which tea's history began to intertwine with global movement, while still retaining the quiet discipline that defined its past. Chapter 10. Tea in Europe and the formation of habit. When tea first reached Europe, it arrived quietly, without ceremony or clear expectation. It was introduced through trade rather than tradition, appearing in ports and private homes before it entered public life. Early European encounters with tea were cautious. The leaf was unfamiliar, the preparation uncertain, and the taste unexpected. Tea was often approached experimentally, sometimes treated as medicine, sometimes as curiosity. Written descriptions from this period reflect restraint rather than enthusiasm. Tea was noted for its bitterness and its warming effect. It was not immediately celebrated, nor widely rejected. As trade routes stabilized, tea became more accessible. Its preparation slowly standardized. Water was heated, leaves were infused, and the liquid was consumed warm and unhurried. Tea entered domestic routines gradually. It was served in the morning or late afternoon, often accompanying quiet conversation. Its presence encouraged pause rather than activity. Over time, vessels were adapted to suit tea consumption. Cups, pots, and trays appeared, designed for repeated use. The act of serving tea became familiar, predictable, and calm. Unlike other imported goods, tea did not demand excess. It fit comfortably within existing habits. It did not replace wine or ale immediately, but offered an alternative. By the end of this period, tea had established itself as a reliable element of daily life in parts of Europe. Its adoption was not dramatic. It was steady, gradual, and sustained. Tea became something one could expect rather than anticipate. This predictability allowed it to endure. Chapter 11. Global trade, production, and quiet expansion. As demand for tea increased, systems of production and trade expanded to support it. These developments were complex, but their outward effects remained subdued. Tea cultivation spread to regions with suitable climate and terrain. Plants were grown, harvested, dried, and transported using methods refined through repetition. The process emphasized consistency over speed. Trade networks moved tea across oceans and continents. Ships carried tea alongside other goods, subject to weather, time, and routine scheduling. Delays were common. Uncertainty was accepted. Despite the scale of this trade, tea itself remained unchanged. Leaves were still infused in hot water. Preparation remained simple. In many regions, tea consumption followed established patterns. It marked breaks in the day. It accompanied reading, writing, or quiet rest. Tea did not require explanation once it became familiar. Its role was understood through use rather than instruction. The expansion of tea production altered landscapes and labour systems, but the daily act of drinking tea remained private and contained. It occurred at tables, desks, and hearths, away from broader systems that supported it. This separation allowed tea to maintain its calming influence. It did not reflect the complexity of its journey. It offered steadiness instead. By this stage, tea had become part of global routine, present in many societies without dominating any. Its expansion was wide, but its presence remained modest. Chapter 12. Tea as an enduring element of daily life. In the modern period, tea settled into a stable role within daily life across cultures. It became neither rare nor remarkable. It was simply present. Preparation methods varied, but the essential process remained the same. Leaves met water. Time passed. The liquid was consumed. Tea accompanied mornings and evenings. It filled pauses between tasks. It supported quiet continuity within changing schedules. Cultural meanings accumulated slowly. Tea came to represent hospitality, routine, or reflection, depending on context. Yet it never required interpretation to be useful. Tea did not compete for attention. It functioned alongside conversation, work, or solitude without interruption. Even as societies accelerated, tea remained slow. Its preparation resisted haste. Its consumption encouraged pause. This resistance was not intentional. It was simply inherent. Across centuries, tea endured because it adapted without transforming itself. It remained grounded in repetition and restraint. In this way, tea did not merely survive history, it accompanied it, closing. A quiet continuity. The history of tea does not conclude with a final event or decisive moment. It continues through repeated preparation and calm consumption. Tea has moved through landscapes, languages, and customs without demanding recognition. Its influence has been steady rather than forceful. Across time, tea has remained what it always was: a leaf, water, time. Its history is not one of urgency or transformation, but of continuity. It reflects human capacity for repetition, patience, and quiet attention. As we conclude this lecture, there is nothing to summarize and nothing to anticipate. Tea remains present, available, and unchanged. It will continue to be prepared, poured, and consumed, much as it always has been. Slowly, calmly, without insistence.